Good morning. Thank you for having me here, and I just wanted to let everyone know that I love being in Malaysia. A gentleman from Kuching had a great influence on my life when I was a young man, put me on the right path. But my first overseas basing back in 1996 was in Malaysia, where I fell in love with the local food, and the food stall vendor when I left didn't know my name, but he called me Mr. Chicken Rice because that's what I consumed each and every day. Mr. Mahathir Aziz made some good points about balance and investments. How do we get the most out of those investments, not just building for the sake of building? Can we optimize? Can we get more out of what we have today? And I firmly believe that you have the right ingredients to be the powerhouse of hosting data centers and large IT infrastructure of the future. But it's not just going to come from a talent pool. It's not just going to come from access to the appropriate resources, but it's how operationally efficient that you're going to execute that. So what we need to look at is how we modernize our data center management. And I want you to think very carefully, You cannot change the outcome unless you change. I speak to many people and they say, but that will require change. So we need to accept that we need to change the way we operate if we are going to affect the outcome. Otherwise, we're just going to be in that loop of insanity. So if we accept that, then we can understand what the true problem is. And we address this problem by combining AI with analytics and automation, and we've made significant investments in this space. AI can give us great insights, but on itself, it's academic. Because we cannot trust implicitly what AI gives us. But what it can do is help you with the unknown unknowns. So we need to combine this with trained analytics, trusted analytics, which then can give us a quantified outcome. And again, this is getting us closer, but we're still academic because we have yet to take action. And without action at scale, through automation, we won't realize these benefits. But what are we trying to address? Waste. You don't have a cost problem. You don't have a CO2 problem. You don't have an energy problem. You have a waste problem because you are operationally inefficient. And the reason why, we'll go into in a moment, but that waste is then realized as cost and energy. But it's realized without benefit. We will always need to consume energy. Things will always cost something. But are we doing it for economic gain? Are we creating value? And that is what our measure should be. And if we accept now that we have a wastage issue due to operational inefficiencies, then we can truly get down to what we need to, which is how do I eliminate the waste? And if I focused on that, of eliminating the waste, the flow-on benefits of cost and energy will take care of themselves. We all know we're moving to cloud. There's some stats here for you to see. But more and more workloads are going that way. What does that mean? We're using someone else's computer, whether it's a data center, whether it's cloud. We are further and further away from our customers who are running the workloads. Therefore, we don't know what we're meant to deliver to them. So we go generic. Everyone gets a Kia. But someone may not need a Kia. They may have specialized. So if you don't have that insight, we're again bringing waste into supply chain. And cloud executives of IT, even without the tools, are knowing that about a third of their spend is wasted. If you put that just in the cloud perspective, $200 billion are spent every year without gain or value capture. That is a problem. And if you can address it, then you're going to be competitive in the market. And if we look at it from the energy perspective, by eliminating this wastage, then we can cut down on the economic spend. Cloud does not solve your energy problem. Someone else is still accounting for it, but on an aggregate, at an economic level, at a macroeconomic level, you are still consuming it. So when we over-allocate, which people are doing for safety reasons, to make sure things run well, 50% loading in there. And if you look at a data center, with the customers that we've worked at, they typically, at best, are 40% at consumption. Most are down around about the 20 to 30%. People will tell you, they'll look at the dials and tell you that everything's fully consumed, but they're not looking at what is being gained by that. Should that resource be used? And this is where I want you to think about this in this change in how you operate. If we look at the common household to the data center, there's some similarities here. When I was a child, we had incandescent globes, highly inefficient at processing. So what did we do? We went to fluorescent, and then we went to LED. We became better. IT did the same thing. We went to multi-core, more efficient processors, more efficient coding. So it improved. Houses, we started putting solar panels on our roof. We became more conscious of what our impact is. We've done the same in industry. Malaysia's leading the way, looking at having the right energy mix. So we're getting better. But there's one thing that started from an efficiency perspective at home, which we have not taken account to in the data center business. It's what mum and dad used to do. Turn your light off when you're not in your bedroom. They are the original savers of energy. Turn off your light if you remember that one. We are not doing this in the data centers. We boldly walk in there and say, we have near limitless compute. Fill your socks. I'll build you 10 data centers. And I'm cheap because I've got at the moment a highly accessible workforce, which unfortunately that will become constrained as the free move of labor happens. So how do we actually make sure we're operationally efficient with the assets that we have today? So if we're thinking about, we've got to look at how we got there. Because it's easy for me to say, it's all about waste, get rid of your waste. Uptime. That's how we got there. Nobody gets fired for spending too much money. It can hurt your career, but I guarantee you that careers have been ended due to uptime. So what happens? I give you more. I over-provision. What happens? The next layer of people over-provision to their customers. What happens? The next layer of virtualized people, they give more. And we build it in at every single layer in the ecosystem, the application through to infrastructure supply chain. And then we start getting hammered on the other side, which is utilization, cost, energy, CO2. So what are we missing? The application, the infrastructure supply chain. We sit here as data center people and go, well, that's not my job. They run the apps. So how do you align your precious resources to what they need? You need to be aware of how they're consuming so you can put the right resource at the right place at the right time and remove resources that are not required. Because there is no solution in this space. If anyone's done economics, it's all about trade-offs. Whatever action you take will have an impact elsewhere, performance, economically. And if we start taking it from this approach, then we can truly understand. If we understand the performance of what the workloads need, the applications, our customers, and give them precisely what they need at the right time and take it away, we'll start to get to where we need to be. And due that I work for IBM, we can never have a slide deck without a Venn diagram. So we've done that for this presentation. But it is about this, okay? There is always a trade-off. Too much performance, you're wasting energy and money. So you need the right performance. And that will only come from being aware. So the IT automation portfolio, which I lead for Asia Pacific, I have the pleasure of, we've made the investments from the observability side to understand everything from your real estate with Maximo up to your infrastructure with Sev1 and Instana through to the applications. We understand what it's about. We take all that telemetry. And then with our acquisitions of Aptio and Turbonomic, we optimize. And then with our advanced AI, we operate. Without observability, you cannot optimize. And once it's optimized, if you do not operate at scale, you're back in the same problem. So why is it so hard? It's pretty straightforward. Context. You operate today without context of how your customers are using their applications, whether it's your internal customers or external. Without context, how do you supply the right information? Complexity. We all digitally transformed, accelerated during COVID. The applications became needlessly complex, which then created a volume of actions that you need to take. And those volume of actions have to be done within a time frame, otherwise they're not relevant. So we need to accept that we're beyond human scale. The problem that we're solving cannot be done by a person, cannot be done by a simple tool. It needs great talented people supported by AI for the things that they cannot, as an individual, perceive, backed by analytics so they can make the right decision, and then automate it at scale so they don't become the bottleneck. And this is a reason. This is from one of our products that actually identifies this at scale. Everything's stitched up in the organization, and the problems exist at all layers, from your physical real estate to where they're geographically located, the cohorts that you compute at. But it also now is traversed up into the virtualized layer, which is burning your money, which is making you more inefficient. So if we can change that approach, then we can truly get the outcome. So if we have that full stack of observability, if we embrace AI, then we'll be able to get that elasticity. I challenge anyone in this room over a coffee to truly prove to me that they have an elastic compute offering to their customers, because I guarantee you it only goes in one direction. No one ever turns it off because they don't know what's going to happen when they reduce it. And this is where we're starting to get where we are. And that will only come from a comprehensive integration from what you're offering to your customers. From this, we have brought ourselves into a strong position, 75% reduction in data center costs. This is what we have achieved for large customers in the tens to hundreds of millions, just by taking the different approach. Imagine what you could do repurposing your existing platforms, not needing to build more. And of course, it obviously pays for itself. So where does this come into energy? Well, we're all aware of FinOps and how we take account through transparency and ownership of our spend. But if now I have this AI that understands every application running in your data centers and cloud, I understand the energy that people are consuming. So now I can take a different lens. I can show back what people are using for their applications, application by application. I used to be a field engineer. Anyone can look at the back of the box or put a meter on the back of a rack to see what it's consuming. But an app doesn't live on a server. It's transient. So if now we can understand what that is, we can take true accountability. And this brings up some really interesting stuff. If we're really wanting to be a leader in green IT, who is consuming it? What is the CO2 to revenue? Everyone knows E to R. Well, if you started in banking, you should. CO2 versus revenue. If I've got an app that's half of your CO2 consumption and it's generating 90% of your revenue, that's a good application. If I've got an app that's 50% of my CO2 doing 10% of my revenue, maybe I need to divest from that, let alone worrying if I optimize it. And you can also take action, because without the transparency, we can't take meaningful action, substantiate it, and bring it forward. So what does that result in? Well, it changes the paradigm. We think we need to invest to achieve green IT. That is one of the areas we will all need to compete and be operationally efficient. But we think we need to invest. We do up the supply chain, yes. But by being operationally efficient, we can get a self-funding green IT case. If I'm eliminating waste, that is eliminating cost without a benefit, that is eliminating CO2 without a benefit, it pays for itself. And if we look at the figures, it's de-identified, but this is a Northeast Coast American bank. Just by, and this is on top of all their other initiatives, better data centers, better usage, better servers, better processing. The data center manager, who's running all their global data centers, they're a top 5 bank globally, actually took accountability and said, you know what, I want to know what my customers are running. And I'll start then providing the right resources at the right time. They deferred $100 million of capital investment. $100 million of capital investment. In anyone's book, that is a worthwhile investment. And it was compounded and continuing. And they were able to substantiate that they avoided 30,000 metric tons CO2, which is a significant saving. And of course, we eat our own medicine at IBM. One of the biggest customers of Turbonomic before the acquisition was the IBM Hersley Labs. And it's a fantastic, I encourage you if you get to go there. We open it up to customers. But I wanted you to think about the impact that we have here. We have a data center with about 6,000 workloads there, so it's not that significant, supporting 11,000 developers. And we've put our observability, our AI, our automation, and our analytics in there, and we drove down the consumption and the cost. But we also made sure that when the performance profile changes, the right resources could be there at the right time. We avoided a lot of CO2. But then I want you to think about the workforce impact. You don't need a human to discover what the stack's doing. You don't need a human to deliver the analytical outcomes on what we should do. You don't need a human to execute. So we have moved down at this data center from teams and teams and teams of people to now one. And you can meet him if you want. One person. Because they're there for the governance and control to make sure the right things are done. And then it's executed. We're not inserting the human into the loop. So, in conclusion, I'm hoping that you'll come to the stall, come have a chat. We are hosting a lunch. All are welcome, within reason. But we need to start that change. And that change is, I'm not going to change the outcome unless we change the way we operate. If you're going to sit there and say, too hard, not my job. If you're going to say, that's the other person, you're not going to change the outcome. Okay? As we have broken down our organizations into specialization, thank you to McKinsey's and Boston Consulting, more and more do I not own the outcome of a task which has created the waste that we have. I execute that task more efficiently. I execute my job more efficiently. But because we no longer see the start to the end of the product or the service, we start to miss in those handoffs the changes. So really think about, if I do collaborate with my peers, if I do collaborate and take the difficult situation that I may operate differently with my customers, I need to move into a part of the stack that I typically don't want to go. Don't be the mechanic that services a car exactly the same for every customer, whether they're driving 500 miles or just taking their kids to school every morning. Because that is not the way you're going to be operationally efficient. It's going to be understanding the usage patterns for all the workloads across your organization or to your external customers. So then we can make sure that we only have the appropriate resources. And if you do that, I want you to think about this at scale. We're working right now with the top 6 bank in Australia. 52% of their infrastructure was not required. 52%, real data. Now I want you to think about this. That changed their mind because we started around how could they defer a refresh and bring on more workload. Now they can talk about consolidating and retiring a data center. Workloads are doing that. Banks are growing. But they can consolidate and retire a data center while they've got growth. And think about what that impact would be from a cost perspective, both long-term capital investment, short-term OPEX, workforce productivity gains, and also how good that would be on the environment, because we obviously have the base load that all of these facilities and the lovely fireworks consume. There was a little bit of an irony to that fireworks at a green IT conference I found. But you're not going to do it unless you change the way you are. And we need to accept that it's now beyond human scale. Don't do what I did as an engineer. If I didn't have the answer, it couldn't be solved because I'm the smartest person in the room. Now what you're here for is governance and control. And just remember, energy efficiency started at home with mum and dad before we got LEDs. Turn your lights off. When you leave your bedroom and you don't need it, turn your lights off. Thank you very much for your time.